Hello and welcome to the MMQB NFL podcast. I'm Conor Orr, Walter Payton Man of the Year. Albert Breer is also here. We're at Radio Row, and this is weird. It's not through a Zoom screen. Welcome to our podcast.
Yeah, this is really weird, and I thank you for recognizing my community work there. I appreciate it.
We are, of course, here live at Super Bowl LIX. I don't know what number that is, but it's Chiefs and Eagles again. The Super Bowl LIX. And before we get into the game, we're going to break down everything. We're going to preview everything from the Eagles side, everything from the Chiefs side. But we have some pressing league matters to take care of, possibly shooting up to a 25-game season at this point, Albert. You were at the commissioner's press conference. I was still in the air. What did I miss?
I mean, I like it was interesting because I do think it was like less aggressive than we've seen in the past, and I still think they're going to do it, but a couple people noted afterwards, and I know, Lloyd Howell, the NFLPA executive director, was asked about it, but you do wonder if there's like some level of pushback or brake tapping or whatever you want to call it that's going on there. And I don't know exactly why, but I still think this happens, and I still think, to me, like the real fork in the road is the opt-outs and the broadcast deals, which I believe is 2029.
Okay.
And you would think that they would want to go to market with, like, hey, here,
more games.
Yeah, here's an 18-game schedule, and maybe they're breaking off again 16 of those games to put it in international locations and say that's a separate broadcast package now, because a lot of those games are at 9:30 in the morning.
Right.
I still think like that's a huge part of all of this, that they're eventually going to be in a spot where it's like, okay, like we need to do this now because we want to go to the broadcast market with, an 18-game product. But it doesn't feel as immediate as maybe it did a couple weeks ago based on the way Roger talked about it.
We got to the end of a long 17-game season, and this is probably the first year where I was notably disappointed in the product. Like, I joined Tom Brady. This is one thing that him and I have in common, and saying that
one of many things.
Yeah. But he said it all along. This is a bad product. It's a bad product. And then he became an announcer and didn't say that anymore. But so I'm going to take up the mantle. I thought at least like halfway through the season, I was like, man, like we're going to stretch this out another game. Like we're just going to keep doing this.
Yeah, and I do think like you see it in the way that teams are managing themselves through the season now. Yeah. And like I think it's, I mean, look, like that's a long year, and the Chiefs like looked rickety at times, and I think part of that was by design. If you ask those guys, what they'll tell you is, we felt like we needed to manage this player or that player. And, I actually think it gives a distinct advantage to the elite, because the elite can look at it and say, well, whether we win 12 or 14 games, we're going to be there in the end. Right. Where you've got other teams that are scraping and clawing to make it into the playoffs. You wonder if that's a factor in the blowouts in the first round. You got these teams that have been scratching and clawing just to get in, and then you have the elite who, to some degree, are able to put it on cruise control or at least manage some guys through the season, and then they're able to hit the ground running when they get to the playoffs. So the flip side of that is that I don't know what level of football they would have to put on TV.
Like how bad would it have to be?
For people not to tune in?
I have watched the Alliance of American Football.
Because for all the bitching I've heard about the officiating, for all the complaining about the quality of play,
we haven't stopped.
All those people who are out there howling on social media and everything else, what are they doing the next Sunday?
I'm here.
Tuning right back in.
Yeah. I don't know if I'd pay to be here, but I'm here.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, that's the thing is, like, I do think there's no governor on the owners when it comes to that stuff, because it's like, well, people continue to tune in.
Right.
And they put the games on Christmas, and look what happens. Christmas is never going away. Christmas football is never going away now. So, I think in a lot of ways, like, it's interesting that the NFL has operated like has within the last year approved private equity ownership, because I think in a lot of different ways there's a private equity feel to the way that the NFL operates.
Do you think, like, you brought that up, and I think it's a good point. You look at the way that the Kansas City Chiefs kind of glided by. You look at the way that the Eagles kind of didn't look spectacular until the end of the season when it counted. The Lions, on the other hand, were probably the best regular season team through 15 games that I'd seen in my entire life. And they were exhausted by the end of the playoffs. can you imagine something like that, a scenario where teams that have that all-in, all-gas mentality have to at least change it at some point?
Yeah, and I don't think I don't even think it's new. Because I think that's what the Patriots did.
Right.
You know, like the Patriots almost treated September like an extended preseason when they had the luxury to do it.
Right.
When Brady was the quarterback there, because again, like, you know you're going to be in it in January.
Yeah.
And that's such a huge luxury to have. It's interesting, and I think, like, you know, has it to some degree destroyed parity in the NFL. You know what I mean? Like, I look at it, I think of the 8 division champions this year, 6 were repeat champions, and all 8 were in the playoffs a year ago. Think about that.
Yeah.
The NFL, which is trumpeted, and rightfully so, like the turnover in playoff teams. I mean, the playoff field was almost static this year. And the 2 teams that are here right now were here a year ago, and then we're playing this game 2 years ago. One of the teams that was in the championship game was in the championship game a year ago, and then the other team that lost in the championship round was in the divisional round a year ago. So, you know, I think that there's a big effect to the way that things work in the NFL right now, and I do think part of it is the wear and tear on teams through the season who can manage themselves through the season effectively. And then the other part of it, of course, is all the rules that govern the quarterbacks, where if you have one, you're really at a big advantage.
That's the other thing, too. It's like I'm glad that the Eagles are in the Super Bowl for the sole reason that Eagles ownership spends. And they spend like a team that isn't cutting
like crazy.
They spend like crazy, and they don't cut corners. And when every other team is like, well, why can't my GM be like Howie Roseman? It's because your owner's not like Jeffrey Lurie, right? And he's just like, yeah, here's the checkbook. You do whatever you want as long as we're in the Super Bowl every year. And so it troubles me to see that some team like the Chiefs, or even to some degree like the Commanders, or all these other teams where it's like you're propelled by a generational talented quarterback. And so what is every other team just going to keep doing? Giving up until they run into Patrick Mahomes in the draft and then being like, sick, now I don't have to do anything else to help him. You know what I mean? And could that, like, that's what I don't want it to become. You know what I mean? And that's why I'm glad the Eagles are here. So you could at least advertise to the rest of the league that, like, you can spend your way into this if you really want to.
Yeah, and I think it's, you know, it's definitely interesting that way, in that, like, it's not just spending on players, and they do spend on players. They're cash over cap every year, but it's really like the spending on all departments. It's the spending. It's the resources that they put into developing the bottom of the roster. It's the resources they put into scouting. It's, you know, in every single way, they're pulling every lever they possibly can. And, you know, the way I've heard it described is like, Jeffrey isn't going to just open the checkbook for anything, but like, if you give him a good reason why you're going to do something, or why you even just want to try something, like, he'll be receptive. You know what I mean? Like, there has to be good reason behind it. But I mean, for the most part, you talk to people in that organization, and it's like, yeah, like, if I come up with a good idea for something, we have no fear in spending to try it out, as long as that something is very well reasoned.
I think that's a lot like our editor, John Plume, who I was, you know, before this, I was like, John, if I buy 2 dinners and I eat 2 dinners, I might be able to write more. I don't know if that's the case or not, but let's at least try it out.
Performance-enhancing drugs.
Let's double the meal budget, and we'll see what happens. We're halfway through that at a great American food city, and so far I would say it's so good. You know, it's working out.
So 2 a night?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
But let's be real, I did that last year too. You know?
Yeah, I think I have 2 tomorrow night. I think I have 2 tomorrow night.
You've double dinners tomorrow?
Tomorrow night.
I got double dinners on Friday too.
Okay.
That's going to be a true, you know what a bang bang is?
What's that?
Well, not what you think it is, probably, right? It's like when you go.
I know where we were going there.
This has nothing to do. We're not talking about the massage parlor stuff today. So what I'm saying is, you go from one great restaurant, and then you have the meal, and then you have the coffee, and you have the dessert, and then you just leave and you go to a second great restaurant, and then you go through the whole thing again: appetizer, you know, main course,
full
entree.
on, like,
yeah, you just go.
Not like appetizer at one, like full meal at the other. It's like everything at both.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, we both run marathons. It's like, that's too much running, but you just deal with the pain. And that's kind of the ethos behind the Bang Bang. Like, it's like, this is too much eating, but you just
take the same amount of training.
Yeah, you just take, you know, as long as you work at it. The other thing I wanted to get your thoughts on from Goodell, obviously I'm so glad he said that there's no problem with officiating. I was really worried about that, Albert.
I'm glad we cleared that up.
Goodell said there is no problem with officiating, so that's good. We can just go into this game completely not concerned.
I mean, I do. I would say this. I do have an understanding on it.
Yes,
from a couple different standpoints. Number one, they should protect the quarterbacks. I mean, and it is what it is. It's just what you don't want to see is that the quarterback's taking advantage of the protections that they get, which I think
Correct.
is where the valid criticism comes in.
I think one of the two quarterbacks in this game does that very well.
Yeah, and again, we've seen it in the past. I mean, I can remember Brady lying on the ground and acting as if somebody had shot him. You
right.
know what I mean? So it's not like we haven't seen this before. But I think that's where there's a valid complaint. You know what I mean? When just the idea of protecting the quarterbacks, I understand that because that's their business, right? And that is protecting the most valuable asset in your business. Does it suck to see it that a defensive player whose intent is not to hurt the other player?
Yeah.
Does it suck seeing that guy get penalized or even fined for that? Yes, it definitely does, and I don't like seeing it either. But I've kind of come to look at that as a cost of doing business because of the importance of the position in the league. I would also say this, I think I think about the culture around officiating everywhere now, and I almost think about my kids' games and some of the psycho stuff that I've seen with parents getting, just tearing.
You talking about yourself?
Tearing, yeah, that's me in the second row. No, I'm very incognito at my kids' games, believe me. But I think that there's some element of culturally, you see it at almost every level of sports now. This rush to blame the officials,
almost conspiratorial.
I mean, it's just and I don't know. I know this. In Massachusetts where I live, there's a shortage in hockey officials because so many of those guys the hell with this.
Right.
You're not paying me enough to deal with this. Some middle-aged man in the stands, spending 2 of the 3 periods yelling at me at the top of my lungs. I don't need this. That guy's waiting for me by the door. What am I doing? You know what I mean? So
for $25 a game.
yeah. I mean, I understand. I think it's obviously a bigger conversation, but I do think we all have this tendency to blame the officials for everything when things don't go our way more than it was 20 or 30 years ago.
Right.
I think part of the problem, and this goes back to the NFL investing back in its game, is we can sit at home, we can see everything now. And 30 years ago, you couldn't see everything on TV.
You could fake a moon landing back then.
Yeah, you didn't. Well, it's a little longer ago than that, Connor. I was in high school in the 90s, and I'm actually kind of offended that you think the moon landing was in the 90s. That's 30 years ago now.
It was in 1997. I remember.
Anyway, but I do think a huge. I mean, you and I have talked about this. A huge part of it is we're able to see so much because of the quality of television now,
right?
And your ability to slow things down and the crystal clear high definition and. So, of course we're going to see more. It's an incredibly hard game to officiate. You've seen what it looks like when you're standing on the sideline at full speed. It's I don't know how anybody makes heads of. I don't know how the coaches coach from the sideline. You know what I mean?
That too.
It's just so much is going on so fast, and your angle, having a low angle of the whole thing is hard. So, to me, it's I for the life of me, I don't understand why there isn't a sky judge yet. I think I have a feel for maybe why which is based on money.
Okay.
But I think but I don't know why you wouldn't invest in that is what I'm trying to say. You know what I mean?
What is it? Extra cameras?
Well, and an extra official on every crew. So you'd be paying an extra official on every crew. And you'd have to find 16 of them that are qualified enough to sit up there and handle looking at the different TV screens and buzzing down so you get a consistent level of performance from all 16 of them. Which, I mean, to me, I think it's I've always felt if you have a sky judge, I think the play clock governs the whole thing, right? If you empower the sky judge to change a call, right? And pick up a flag, throw a flag, whatever it is. Well, I think it's fair to say it's got to be pretty obvious for you to go in and change a call, and to me that's governed by the play clock. Because if you've got to look at it 5 different times that it's not obvious, and now 30 seconds have come off the play clock, and the next play is starting and you can't stop the game.
Right.
If you see it in 5 seconds while the other team's still in the huddle, well then, like, all right, now the sky judge buzzes down, the flag gets picked up or the flag gets thrown. I don't know why they haven't done more with that yet. They're starting to get there with replay assist. I've been covering the league long enough to know how they cut financial corners. Like, I couldn't believe when I heard earlier this year that the pylon cam isn't at every game. Do you know that?
And there's also no Danishes at interviews anymore. Did you know that?
Oh, there you go.
Cut out, it's just like,
private equity.
What is this shit,
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. To put a bow on this, though, I do wonder, out of curiosity, like, Jalen, and I was at Philly all throughout the playoff run, and I had my radar up for a couple of the Mahomes things that happened with officiating, and I was watching the way that officials treated Jalen Hurts as opposed to Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts late slides and gets the crap knocked out of him, and there's no call, and this happened in 2 of the 3 games that I remember in the playoffs. I do wonder if there's at least an advantage in the outcry as it pertains to the Eagles, because now, like it or not, perception exists that this one player is
being
favored
protected
far and above everybody else.
And I think part of that is too is like that. I think Jalen kind of suffers the same fate as Josh Allen and Cam Newton did for a lot of years, where because they are used as a runner by design so much, they are afforded less protection.
Right.
And I think that that's a tough thing too, because like, how do you really officiate that? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, where it's like, okay, like, so a Patrick Mahomes or say a Joe Burrow scrambles, and okay, like their radar is up, like, all right, like if somebody comes in high, somebody comes in late, we're flagging it, versus like a Jalen Hurts or a Josh Allen, where they may be running by design more often. Now they scramble, and it's like kind of you're conflating, like, okay, like this is a scramble versus this is a designed run. Right. And so I got to call it the same way. So I'm not calling that when it's a designed run. So do I call it when it's a scramble?
Right.
I just think because of the evolution of the position, we've seen some of those lines get blurred. And again, like, I think it's one reason why Cam Newton took so much damage over the course of his career is because he wasn't afforded the protection because they used him so much on designed runs. I think the same thing exists with Jalen Hurts.
Do you hope, like, are you one of the people, I am, because I'm like kind of a miserable bastard, like, I kind of want the game to completely hinge on an awful officiating call. Like, I think that's just like a total dream scenario for me.
Is that like the world, like some guys want to see the world burn type thing? I mean,
but I also want to be the pool reporter. Like, that's got to be the second part of it, is I've got to be down in that locker room and just be like, why on earth didn't you call a face mask on that play? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's just good sport. But typically, I mean, this is my 11th Super Bowl. This is your 34th. And, officials tend to swallow their whistle.
By the way, that would make my first Super Bowl, like, have happened when I was 11. So, like, that's not right. I'm old. I'm not that old.
Officials do tend to swallow their whistle in this game, big time.
Yeah.
Like, don't you notice that? Like, remember last year, there was a bunch of outcry about officiating leading up to this, and then all of a sudden, I don't think we saw a penalty called until like the third quarter of this game.
Yeah, I think that there's that tendency, and the bigger the game, the more they're going to let them play. And I think this one,
especially if you're Eli Manning, just keep letting it go until he completes the pass.
No whistle,
never,
no whistle. Because Eli's a great scrambler, so they didn't know if the play was truly over yet. I think it's like I think that it'll be interesting to see like how they officiate the first quarter and whether or not that holds up over the course of the game. Because I do know, for most teams and most players, it's like you spend a period of time at the beginning of the game just sort of figuring out what you can get away with, whether it's an offensive lineman, how he's blocking, and whether something's a hold or something isn't a hold, or a DB playing a receiver physical, and like how far off the line can he like stick with him like that and keep kind of jamming him and messing with him. So I think that's what players are looking for, though. It's just consistency in the way something's officiated, both game to game, and then when you have an idea of like the way a certain crew is going to officiate the game, how it's going to be officiated from the first quarter, the second quarter, the third quarter, the fourth quarter. They want that to be consistent because they're probably going to play the fourth quarter the way they saw the first quarter play out.
Underdog is the best place to cash in on all your takes during the playoffs. Which players are going off and which ones are ice cold. With over 5 million happy players and $2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in on all your favorite athletes' performances. With their Pick'em game, you could win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on a player's stats, like yards, touchdowns, interceptions, and more. Underdog is the only pick'em platform that puts the power to cash out in your hands. Now you can either keep riding with your entry or tap the Win Now button to cash out whenever you want. Every dog deserves a second chance, and with Underdog Rescues, you can get your money back and receive a promo if an early injury causes your entry to lose. Now, I am not much of a pick'em expert, but a lot of my friends too, who are novices in this whole thing, say that Underdog is the best way to immediately get into the game. For example, this week, look at, hey, is Brock Bowers going to get higher or lower than 8 catches? Is Joe Mixon going to score more or less than 1 touchdown? These are great ways to get into the game, spice up the action a little bit, and make your weekend of watching football all the more enjoyable. And Underdog is the best place to play Pick'em. Download the app, sign up with promo code MMQB, and deposit now to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. That's promo code MMQB. You must be 18 years or older, 19 years or older in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 years or older in Colorado for some games, 21 years or older in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado for some games. If you're concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. And in New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. All right, let's talk about this damn thing. You and I have only made like 6,000 predictions to this point. Are you consistent, by the way? Like Radio Row, for those who don't know, you go up and down, and you know, if you're someone like Albert, you get stopped all the time and you get asked to do interviews. I filmed an interview with what, like a Scandinavian television station the other day.
I did a Hungarian.
Hungarian?
I did Hungarian at the Eagles, yeah.
Hungary, okay.
Nice.
I
afforded time to them because Hungary's next to Austria, which is where my mom's from. So so they're like sort of my neighbor.
Some deep Breer, like,
Yeah.
Well, whatever your mom's maiden name is. Deep, yeah.
Rettenbacher.
Okay. What is it?
Rettenbacher.
Okay.
There you go.
Deep inside.
Like the popcorn.
Like someone's watching a TV in Hungary and be like, that's Albert.
Yeah.
That's my cousin.
Yeah.
But you get asked over and over again, who do you think is going to win the game? Who do you think is going to win the game? Do you keep the same prediction every time? Or do you just change it? Yeah.
I try to, or I at least say, I will at least, if I do get asked, I will at least preface it with, I forgot what I said on the website, so I don't want to go against that. I think I said, this shows how much effort I put into the picks. Mitch can give,
our editor, Mitch Goldich.
Mitch Goldich can give greater color to that. I think I said 27-23 Chiefs.
27-23 Chiefs.
It's because I'm out of the business of picking against the Chiefs. Like,
That's
I was
true.
supposed to be out of the business of picking the Chiefs after last year's Super Bowl, and then I got back in the business of picking against the Chiefs before the AFC title game, and that didn't work out for me. So I'm back out of the business of picking against the Chiefs now.
You know what's going to suck is this has big-time late Patriots vibes, and the entire theme of the post-game press conference when the Chiefs win is going to be the media didn't believe in us the whole season, and that that's what it's going to be.
Well, they've latched on to more recently is the refs. They do not like that storyline that the refs are helping them out.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, like that was something that I heard that a lot. Like when I was on the field before the AFC title game, and you started to hear a lot of that, like how they were not pleased with the way that people were.
We talked about this last week, though. I love, like, after the game, the Chiefs were like, see, it's not about the refs. And it's like the refs made literally the most consequential call of the entire season in your favor on a fourth down. So, like, it's a little bit about them. Just a tiny, tiny bit about them. But, all right. So, yeah, I think I picked the Chiefs to lose 31-28 because
So you're saying the Chiefs are like youth hockey parents?
Yes. 100%.
Or no. They'd be the reverse. They'd be the reverse of youth hockey.
Who's
parents.
the delusional ones? But I picked them to lose
They're all
because
delusional.
I'm a masochist and I want to walk into the cigar smoke and be a part of this whole thing where it's like,
So-
nobody believed in us. We were losing the whole time. Whatever.
I do have some logic. Like I think the way to beat the Eagles is to force Jalen Hurts to throw the ball downfield under pressure.
Yep.
So I think if you look back at the history of it, I think it's the last guy to rush for over 85 yards individually against the Chiefs in the playoffs was Leonard Fournette in the Super Bowl, and he had like 89
Wow.
in like 2020, like
Yeah.
in the Super Bowl that year. So I think Spags is going to consistently change the picture on the Eagles, just as far as where guys are lining up. And so I think so much of what they do is going to be like, how do we pressure and move the front around and get Leo Chenal in different spots. I think he's going to be like a hidden key to the game. And so if you can do that, then you got to win in second and long.
Right.
And against the Eagles, that's where Jalen Hurts runs the ball.
Right.
So now can you get yourselves in a position where they can effectively take a running quarterback out of that element of the game? Well, they did that for the most part against Josh Allen last week,
True.
or 2 weeks ago. So then if you can get them into third and long and force Jalen Hurts to throw the ball down the field, I think that's how you win. And I don't know. I think there are some matchups that the Chiefs can exploit with their offense. Ultimately, like, we can talk about all of that stuff all we want. I think Joe Tooney's a key. Do they play him inside or outside?
Sure.
I think there's some merit to the idea of moving him back to guard for this game.
Yes.
Ultimately, like, I think this is a really close game. And I've seen this movie before, and I just don't like. I can't pick against if I think a game. This is like I'm half joking about the whole thing about having a rule against picking against the Chiefs, although I kind of do.
You're right.
But here's the thing: is like I think my logic tells me, like, if it comes down, we saw it in the AFC title game. If it comes down to the last 5 minutes, I don't think they're going to lose.
Right.
And
If Mahomes has the ball.
Right. And I understand what you're saying there, that the Eagles could go on get the ball with 6 minutes left and go on some 4-minute drive and, like.
What was it, the Steelers game? What was it, like a 10? It was like, or they had the ball for like 17 minutes straight or something like that? It was like an Army drive. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible.
Yeah, so, I mean, you could do that. They could do that. But I trust the Chiefs in those spots. I trust Spags is going to have something in that spot.
Sure.
And again, like, I think so much of it is like, who can make because they are close, who can put the other team in the most uncomfortable situation. And I think right now for the Eagles, it's can we get the ball downfield effectively when Jalen's under pressure? And I think the Chiefs will be able to do enough of that on defense and get enough from Mahomes and Kelsey. I think Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy are going to be tough matchups for the Eagles based on some areas of their secondary. I think the Chiefs do enough to win.
All right, so I have a couple of questions. The first one, you answered 90% of them in the last minute, but we're going to break this down in a neat and organized manner. The Eagles' biggest Achilles heel in your mind, is it Jalen Hurts and downfield passing at that point?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. I think the other thing I would look at with the Eagles would be what happens if you can get those fast guys matched up on their inside.
Yeah.
On their inside corners. So if you have Cooper DeJean playing there, you get him matched up. If you find a way to get C.J. Gardner-Johnson matched up on one of those fast guys, I think that's where the matchup is. And the vision for this Chiefs offense has been all year to start pushing the ball downfield more consistently with those two guys. Worthy obviously is a rookie. He took some time to develop. Hollywood Brown was hurt. Now you have both those guys, and we've seen glimpses of it, glimpses of what they're able to do with those two. But I think that will be the other one. It's like, can the Chiefs stress the depth of the Eagles secondary?
Did you know, by the way, that Vic Fangio today, the Eagles defensive coordinator, a couple hours before we started taping this podcast, was asked about Cooper DeJean and Reed Blankenship calling themselves the Exciting Whites? Did you like?
No.
The great, maybe my favorite part of the Super Bowl. I think it was Jane Slater of NFL Network was like, Vic, this is going to be kind of an off the ball question, but Cooper DeJean and
I love Jane
and Reed Blankenship, they call themselves the Exciting Whites, and then Vic Fangio just goes, I'm not talking about that. It was my.
So I guess you didn't like the T-shirts.
Yeah, he was just like, it's like, yeah, I'm not going to talk about that, which is like.
Which is probably like
the safest way to go.
He knows that nothing good can come from him addressing that.
Yeah, let me try to answer this in a fun way. But to me, I think that the one interesting thing, and after rewatching the Rams game and the way that they played against the Eagles, when Saquon Barkley was off the field, Kenneth Gainwell had a hard time protecting Jalen Hurts as a pass protector. And there was those series, down after down after down, where Jalen Hurts would be dropped back in 3rd and long, 2nd and long scenarios, especially when he was hurt at that point in time. And he'd get sacked for these massive losses. Almost 90% of those plays were when Saquon Barkley wasn't on the field. Can you get them in a spot where you run him dry, get him off the field, and then just absolutely unleash the hounds on Jalen Hurts? Again, I mean, I think it starts and ends with the quarterback here and how he handles it. But there's a lot of nuance to that.
Yeah, and I don't think it's – I mean, I think it's the feel Spags has for – what he's faced with and what his team needs in each individual situation. Like you said, taking advantage of spots like that where you do have, all right, here's a weakness when Gainwell's out there in pass pro, we should go after them. And I think part of that, like part of their ability to take advantage of it is how smart the guys that Spags has on defense are. Like I had this conversation with him, last year after they won the AFC title game, and he said to me it's the smartest group of players he's ever had.
Right.
And I circled back with him a few weeks ago on that. He said, and this year's group's even smarter. Because a lot of those guys are a year older now.
Big knock on Justin Tuck and Jason Pierre-Paul.
Yeah,
Justin
I guess
Tuck
so.
works at Goldman Sachs. How could you not be the smartest player that Spags ever coached?
Sorry, OC.
Antonio Pierce.
I think having that group, having the group of players, and he, to be fair, he said like it's more like the balance of it, like where it's like everyone is smart. Everyone we put out there, we feel like we can trust. It allows you to do more stuff, and I think take advantage of some of the situations. And I think that's one thing that's also really interesting about this game is that the Chiefs are really they're a chameleon to some degree. Like they can be what they need to be every week. And they're able to morph from one thing to the next, which I think helps them cover up some of their holes in personnel, like their depth at corner, their the issue they've had at left tackle, and then with Tooney in there now moving over and stabilizing that. Now you look at how that's had an effect at guard. I think they're able to mask a lot of that because they are so versatile in what they're able to bring to the table scheme-wise on both sides of the ball. On the other side of that coin, the Eagles are very simple on both sides of the ball. Right. And so I think that part of it, I mean, to me, I've seen those sorts of matchups in the past too, and generally the team that can do more has a little bit of an edge. So you wonder if that's going to give the Chiefs an edge in matching up on this one where, maybe the Eagles to some degree take it and say, like, they're very sound. They do a lot of things right. They're able to kind of adjust on the fly, but they don't throw a lot at the other team. I think, how much the Chiefs throw at you could be an issue for the Eagles.
So that's my thing, right? And I think that it makes a difference because this year it's Vic Fangio, right? And Andy Reid, I mean, we've covered all these Chiefs Super Bowls, and we've seen Andy Reid come out with something that we have not seen at all during the regular season. And we saw that 2 weeks ago against Buffalo. They had that package with the 2 tight ends in the backfield, and then they were running some read option out of that. They scored 2 touchdowns on that package. It was something that Buffalo hadn't seen all season, and it just cut their defense in half. They had no means of stopping it, right? And in a couple Super Bowls ago, I remember it was like some sprint option stuff with Mahomes that Reid just kind of pulled out of his back pocket. But this time, it's Vic Fangio on the other side of the ball. And is he someone who can stop the bleeding a lot faster than a coordinator who maybe feels a little bit overwhelmed by Andy Reid and the specter of Andy Reid and like what Andy Reid's capable of? And I do wonder if this becomes like almost the definitive Fangio game on the other side.
Yeah, and I think that's what's interesting about it. Like, I mean, look, the Rams were able to move the ball. Yeah. On the and in the snow on the Eagles. And I think part of that's having a veteran quarterback who, look, what Vic's defense does is it forces you to adjust post-snap because you don't really have coverage tells. Mm-hmm. So you're able to, you don't get the indicators that you do with other defenses. So you have to react in like the 3 seconds between the snap and the ball coming out. And then Jaden Daniels struggled a little bit as a rookie, facing a defense like that. So I think having Mahomes in a situation like that helps. And then I think also like how Fangio handles the middle of the field. Because I do think you'd be in a spot where Mahomes might be able to make some things happen as a runner in this game. Because what the Chiefs, I think, could do here is say, okay, we know you're going to try to take away Travis Kelce. If you devote a ton of middle-of-the-field resources to taking Kelce away, you know what we're going to do? We're going to run the quarterback on you. And Mahomes he's so good at the back-breaking. He doesn't run much.
He does,
but he scrambles to throw, obviously. He's like off the charts, as good as anybody ever at that. But he also the well-timed back-breaking run.
To the point where Sean McDermott had a spy on him 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I mean, Matt Milano, that was a big part of the game plan for them, was eliminating that. But it's right. It's a really awful choice that you have to make. Although Mahomes looks a little bit faster than Kelce in the postseason. I'm just, no offense to Travis, I'm just saying.
But I mean, to me, I look back at Travis. So my favorite Travis Kelce play from the playoffs was remember the first? I think it was the first touchdown against Houston, where he's legitimately standing still in the end zone.
Yeah.
And it was how, you know what I thought of when I saw that? It was like Peyton Manning throwing when his arm strength was gone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because Peyton had to see it so far ahead of everybody else and had to anticipate so much because the ball was not getting there with any velocity.
Right.
He had to be so advanced to make it work based on where he was physically at that point. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And I sort of think the same way, how far ahead of the defense do you have to be if you are literally with how quick those, how big and long and fast all the guys are out there and how quick close spaces close, especially when you're in the red zone. How far ahead do you have to be of the defense to be standing still in the end zone catching a ball like that?
Yeah.
And I think it's a perfect example of how this guy is he knows what he needs to do.
Yeah.
And he knows, he's not near what he was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, physically. But he's so advanced, he's so advanced mentally, psychologically, that he's able to create separation with his mind rather than his feet.
You've at this point convinced me that the Chiefs are going to win, which kind of sucks.
But you picked the Eagles.
I picked the Eagles,
it's
but
in
now
print,
I'm
so you can't go back on it.
I know. This kind of sucks.
Sorry, dude.
I know. It's going to happen, right? It's kind of...
I mean, look, I've compared them a lot to New England this year. This has been they are the Patriots year with the Chiefs. They are the Patriots. The Patriots did have... the one thing I would take the other side of it is when you're picking them based on the coach and quarterback, that was generally when the Patriots would lose. It was they got Brady and Belichick. That's when they would lose.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I'd say the Chiefs have more than that. I think the Chiefs have a lot of good young defensive players. Kelce isn't what he was, but they do have Hollywood now. The offensive line worries me a little bit with their tackle situation. Do you play Tooney there or not? I think is a swing factor.
If you can get Brandon Graham, can you impact the game a little bit more?
Right. So I have those questions like everybody else does. But if we want to compare this to the Patriots, it's the Patriots weren't perfect on these. I mean, the Eagles.
No.
The Eagles ran the Patriots off the field.
Right.
In Super Bowl, what was that, 52? So it can happen. And the Chiefs got run off the field because of their offensive line problem against the Bucks 4 years ago. So it can happen. I don't know if it will.
So I'm so defeated at this point.
Well, because I tried to reel you back in there.
Because now I'm in order for me to even come out and I have to say that Vic Fangio is better than. And Vic Fangio is great, but I have to say he's better than the greatest postseason defensive coordinator in NFL history.
Right.
Right. And that's tough. That's a tough one. I have to say that in some way, shape, or form, Jalen Hurts is going to outperform Patrick Mahomes on downfield throws. That's a tough thing to argue. Eagles are more Italian. That's what I got, Albert. You can read it on SI.com.
Sirianni, Patullo.
Panunzio.
DeSandro.
Paginetti. Yeah. So, I mean, that's it. I mean, no. I think it's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a close game. I think that the Eagles, I mean, still, to this point, the one thing that amazes me, and we don't talk about it a lot, is how they've completely transformed themselves in a way that has taken the ball out of Jalen's hands, but in the best possible way.
Yeah.
You look at the combined targets for Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown last year, or the last time they made the Super Bowl, as opposed to this one. It's like a 90 target difference between the two of them combined. And all those resources are going into safer plays that are extending your time of possession, and they're decreasing the likelihood of something bad happening with the ball. And it's like, can you win a football game like that ultimately? Against the Commanders, they had the big 4th and 5 where you get A.J. Brown singled up, and a lot of these things end up falling in your lap, some of the big Saquon touchdown runs. Can you get that all to happen again, against the greatest of the great in the most important game of the season? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think it's...
I hope so. I have not correctly predicted a Super Bowl in so long, and it's been to the point, I don't know if I've told you this story before.
I was wrong last year.
Were you?
I was wrong last year. I think I was right the year. I think I picked the Chiefs the year before. Yeah, I picked the Chiefs the year before. I think I picked the Rams to beat the Bengals. I don't even remember.
You know, I want to not have to make a prediction until I see pregame warm-ups, because last year, you remember at the game, all of a sudden Travis Kelce just comes out like his lower body's on fire, like he just starts dunking on people and pushing people. And like even in pregame warm-ups, I was like, these people look like wild creatures, you know? And then the 49ers, everybody looked tight, everyone was very nervous, and I was like, oh shit, the Chiefs are going to win this game.
When you had the fumble early on, right?
Like you could tell the tightness. I mean, even dating back to like, I might have picked the Rams to beat the Patriots in that god-awful 13-10 Super Bowl, but it was the beginning of that game, people that were on the field coming back off the field and saying, you have to see the look in Jared Goff's face. It looks like he's about to get hit by a bus. And no offense to Jared, I mean, he's evolved as a player since then, but that was a big moment for a very young guy in his career. You know, I would like to wait for my predictions until like 6 seconds before the game. That's not possible in this business. But part of it's like that. Like if tomorrow,
hey Mitch, can we get our picks in at like 6?
I'll file it 11 seconds before the game.
Yeah, can I get my pick in at 6:23 on Sunday?
But all of a sudden, like, okay, Gonna Fly from Rocky comes, and this team just comes blasting out of the tunnel looking like just
a freight train.
Yeah. All of a sudden, I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
that's a real thing.
I think it is a real thing, and it's like, I've always felt this way about clutch, like the word clutch, right? I've always felt like clutch isn't raising the level of play.
Yeah,
it's maintaining your level of play.
Okay.
And I've always felt like what a clutch athlete is. A clutch athlete is somebody who does not let everything around him affect how great he is. Because I think the reason why you see that sort of athlete, you see the Joe Montanas, the Tom Brady's, like compete at that level on stages like this, is because of the nerves of everybody else.
Yeah.
It's because other people are tight. And so if you're maintaining your level of play, then it's going to show up at a greater level if everybody else out there is a bundle of nerves. And the Chiefs have so many people that have been on this stage so many times now. Trent McDuffie has never had a season that didn't end in a Super Bowl championship. George Karlaftis has never had a season that didn't end in a Super Bowl championship. I mean, think about that. You know, Chris Jones, Patrick Mahomes, and Travis Kelce, this is their 5th Super Bowl in 6 years. They played in 7 AFC championship games in a row. Like, if you've been in so many high-leverage situations, you know how to handle them. And I'll be interested to see how the Eagles handle that, too, because they came so close. There was a point where it looked like they were going to run the Chiefs over in that game 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, it looked like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
It was sort of like, to me, like that was like a little bit like the Falcons-Patriots Super Bowl. The Falcons looked too fast and too talented for the Patriots early in that game. And the Patriots, you know, like they obviously fell way farther behind than the Chiefs did a couple of years ago. But like things level off, and then all of a sudden who's able to maintain it? I just trust that you're going to get a really good performance from the Chiefs on Sunday, you know?
I have 2 closing thoughts on this. One, if you could take like Patrick Mahomes' clutchness and almost take it like a clutch Ozempic, would you do it? Like you're on deadline and you have like 11 minutes to file. You just blast this thing into the back of your arm, and all of a sudden you don't feel any.
Clutch Ozempic.
Yeah, you just like shoot it in there, and all of a sudden you're totally good.
And all of a sudden you're just like,
yeah, you're just in the zone.
You're just the Iceman.
Yeah, I would take it.
I think so.
Yeah, no side effects.
No side effects. I would take it.
Yeah. Even if there were like some weird side effects, like it made my eyes like bloodshot.
Well,
or something,
just to have
if I lose my hair, I would.
But
still do
I
it.
don't know. But I think in our jobs, like
I'm the king of clutch.
Stress sort of makes you better. You know what I mean? Like I.
That's not true.
No, but I do think it does. I think like.
I've never read something I've written stressed and been like, oh shit, that was good.
No, but I think it's like feeling the need. But I think it's like feeling the need to outcompete somebody for somebody. There should be stress.
Yes.
Right? Like you're in a situation where everybody's got shit. Like I almost used a swear. I don't know if we can bleep that out, Andrew. Crappy access. And like
I cursed like 3 times.
Making the most of it. Yeah. So.
My other thought here, and this just occurred to me, and almost to the point where I need to change my Super Bowl pick. If the Eagles...
We're working on them, Kansas City. We'll get them there.
If the Eagles somehow dismantle the 2 greatest modern football dynasties, both in the Super Bowl, do you know how annoying that fan base would be in perpetuity for the rest of our lives?
If I don't have to hear that stupid chant once again in my life, I'll be happy.
I don't mind the chant. You know what it is? It's just this...
It's like when you're in this... It's coming here, like on Friday.
Yeah, that's fine.
You can't walk 30 yards without hearing them spelling Eagles.
I'm totally fine. I'm okay with every single thing about it. My
it's
issue...
Like the Eagles chant has given me self-awareness and how annoying it must be for other people when one person says OH and the other person responds IO.
Is that how you guys do it?
That's how we do it, yeah.
OH and then IO?
So, yeah, or if you're in a crowd, it's like one person will yell OH and then everyone else yells IO.
Okay.
So,
you're like Jets fans, you don't have to learn to spell all that well. It's only 4 letters. Eagles fans, it's tough. I mean,
6.
There's a couple more. Yeah, slightly more.
Yeah.
You know?
But I think the Ravens fans have one now, too.
No, you can't start it. Like, the window's closed.
No, but I think they do.
But my issue with it, Albert, and we'll close with this, is this feeling from the city that they are this perpetual Rocky-like underdog when their owner spends more money than any other team in the NFL.
Oh, they're like
you got this scrappy spirit. You're allowed to trade for A.J. Brown. That's a $100 million contract.
They are they're a perfect illustration of a big market like sports franchise.
You guys are doing all right. You're like the 5th biggest city in America. Like, you know, Kansas City is like, that's an underdog.
Yeah, Kansas City's
all of a sudden the greatest quarterback in history just wanders into your Midwest enclave.
Yeah,
that's an underdog story.
Kansas City's now Drago, I guess. Yeah.
Good God. Yeah. All right. Well, as usual, Albert said we're competitive. I outdressed him again. Glad we have this on video. Thank you guys so much for listening.
I don't know. I like this look. I
did the Birks yesterday.
Yeah.
I rocked the Birks. I got some weird looks, so I had to button it back up. But then you brought him out, possibly out of the confidence that
if we both did it on the same day, that might be a little weird.
I trailblazed the path for you to do that to ultimate
comfort.
Thank you guys so much, though, from the bottom of my our hearts, for listening throughout the year. It means a ton, and being here able to do this is the thrill of a lifetime. We'll be back on Tuesday after the Super Bowl to recap everything, to spin it forward. Hey. Oh, man. I see some people I got to go say hi to.
And thank you, by the way, to Andrew Christie behind the camera, to Kent Brown.
The amazing SI video team.
Yeah, they've done an awesome job all week. Appreciate them. And back home, Shelby Royston.
Yes.
We should give him a shout out.
He's been incredibly patient with us all year. He is the genius behind all of this. Thank you, Shelby. Thank you, everybody else. And we will see you after the big game.
We'll have a champion then.
Chiefs.
Chiefs.